Chair Neil Hannigan,
Present.
Member Ron Kern,
Present.
Member John Liscombe,
Present.
Member Roy Shines,
Present.
Vice Chair Arthur Zepp.
Present. Pledge of allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the September 18th meeting. Any additions, subtractions, comments?
Motion to approve.
Second? Any second available? Go ahead.
I second, sure.
Sure. Approved, unanimous. All right, so today we're going to continue the, we're going to continue with the public comment. Is there any comment regarding items that have been covered so far at previous meetings? And I'd like to exclude the water pipes from the discussion. We'll have public comment on that after the presentation. Are there any other public comments? Good morning.
Good morning, Terry Brown, Harbor Drive South. I wasn't at the last meeting, so if I'm violating a rule, you'll let me know.
Yes, I will.
And I went through the report that the town engineer wrote, and nowhere in that report, although there was an article in today's paper with Governor DeSantis about these wastewater facilities failing and being fined for dumping the poop into the intercoastal and everywhere else. So I don't know if all of you read the Palm Beach Post or not. Some people don't like it because they think it's too radical. But nowhere in that report does it mention what the cost would be to the end user when that facility, which the South Central facility will need to be upgraded. There's no question about that. One of the people from Boynton Utilities told me that they were working on that plan. So that's something that needs to be included in whatever final report you send, because the residents need to know that even though they're quoting these fantastic rates for water and sewer usage, when the facility has to upgrade, it's going to cost everybody, all the users. So that's another thing. The other thing that wasn't pointed out anywhere that I recall, again, I haven't memorized your report word for word, that once you have a sanitary sewer system on a barrier island, you're looking at the potential of increased development, quote, condo towers in some of the areas that someone might desire to tear down and rebuild. And I did speak to another member of the utility authority in Boynton, which I don't recall which person, but they told me that if the town of Ocean Ridge desires to keep low density development, I think currently the code is garage level plus 2, is that the limit?
36.
Huh?
36.
Okay. Anyway, you could limit that by recommending, you couldn't, but the town commission could, by recommending an ordinance that the sanitary sewer system, if you get one here, does not hook up to any project above that level. That's an ordinance, and they would abide by it. The utility company would say the town does not want 3, 4, 10-story buildings, and we won't hook up or add to that. So I appreciate if you take that into consideration on your final report to make that recommendation to the full commission, that they can limit development by not having sewer. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, town engineer report, please.
Good morning, sunshines. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
I'm sorry, that was my nickname. I thought you were talking to me. My wife calls me Sunshine.
You should have in front of you what should say now final on this septic-to-sewer report. There were a few questions and additions that were asked to be made at the last committee meeting, and those were addressed, and I'll just go over them briefly so that we all know that those were taken care of. Please understand that some of you on this committee, you two guys, are much more familiar with the details and the engineering and technical aspects, if you will, of both the septic to sewer and the water system. However, this document, this final document, is something for everybody in the town to read and understand the basics of what is here and what can be put here in the future. So I know it gets a little frustrating for those that want to leap all the way to final design, and however, we have to start from the beginning and understand as a group, as a community, and then move forward. So just a few things that were added to that final.
If I may.
Go ahead.
I agree with what you just said, but there's one part of that I think is important, that wherever you go with this, or whatever your plan is, that the plan for the type of system that was designed, and you went over two of them, is that it is conceptual.
Correct.
Okay, and that's important, because I'm not here to challenge the concept, although we could have a fun time with that.
Right.
I think that it's important that it's been said that way. It's not the final, even though you said this is your final.
Right.
It's not the final design that would ever come out of
Thank
this,
you.
in my
That's
opinion.
exactly right. This is all conceptual. I mean, there's a lot more to go. In the engineering world, I mean, you go from conceptual to preliminary, and preliminary's is a long process as well, and then there's final, and then there's construction. I mean, there's a long way from here. The good news is that the train left the station, as we say as engineers, and we're moving forward in a forward direction to share as much information as we can with each other, so at the end of the day, when a policy decision is made, we've exhausted all the avenues and looked up all the facts as best we can to make the commission be in a position where they can make the best decision for all of our citizens here in Ocean Ridge. So there were a few things that we addressed, that we added to this report. There was a question about the typical sewer bill. That is in here, in the report itself, in the verbiage. We added a pros and con page in here that talks about this two systems, pros and con. That's after the pull-out section. The system summary, after the system summary, there's a pros and cons section. So you will see that added to this report. We were asked to provide a lift station picture. There was no pictures of lift stations, so we gave you a few of those. And also understand that as far as there was a question with respect to where is there a vacuum system physically today, there is a vacuum systems in the village of Palm Springs. So the pictures of the vacuum houses are from the village of Palm Springs. Lift station pictures are everywhere. You just don't see it. You drive by it all the time. They're usually fenced in and vegetated, and so you don't see too much of that. But there's pictures in there of lift stations now. We corrected the statement with respect to multifamily homes, not only having, some of them have package plans, but some of them also have septic systems. So thank you for that. The cost range was looked at again, and that's in here as well for both systems. The fire hydrant, I kind of will talk about the water system after this. That was not pronounced properly in the plan. It has to do with AutoCAD, 3-dimension, and it's way over my head, but my drafting department made it more pronounced, the fire hydrant icons. The unit count, which is that last page, please understand that's what I would call a living document, meaning that it's probably not perfect. It's the purpose of the unit count at the end of this booklet, at the end of this report, was for us to estimate a sewage flow and to compare that sewage flow to the available flow from the availability in the wastewater treatment plant. And at the end of the day, there's more than enough capacity for Boynton to take the town of Ocean Ridge. So that was the purpose of the unit count. Now, I know we'll probably be off here or there, but it's minuscule in comparison to the availability in the wastewater treatment plant, so understand that. And that's a living document. As condos and multifamily units get torn down and new ones get put up, that number changes, or someone will call and say, well, we have a meter over here that we didn't know about, so just understand that's a living document. We checked dynamic, thank you. We checked with respect to a reservation fee, and there is no need for a reservation fee, so we took that out of the report as well. There were questions about the water mains, like who owns the water mains, and we'll go through that. I just want to make sure that that I let you know that we've done everything that was asked of us at the last meeting. And I'm sorry some of you missed the last meeting, but when you go through this final report, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. But we have to come to some closure here, and so that's why it's written final on your report. Okay, so with respect to the water lines, the plans that you have now show a little more detail as to the water distribution system. So let's go back. The town of Ocean Ridge owns their own water distribution lines. And so when I say water today, that doesn't mean drainage, okay? We're talking about potable water. There are water lines located in all of the local roads within the town of Ocean Ridge, with main lines running down Ocean Avenue. And ultimately, there are 3 subaqueous, below ground pipes that connect from Ocean Ridge to the city of Boynton Beach. So the city of Boynton Beach supplies us the water, and we are metered, each one individually. Everybody's a little different in the multifamily areas, but you're basically metered and charged accordingly. Charged the same in-city fee as a citizen residing in Boynton Beach. So if you look at the plans, you will now see 3 subaqueous crossings, one by Neil's house on Island Drive South, one on Woolbright and near running parallel to Woolbright Road, and the middle one running parallel to Ocean Ave. That's shown on the plans. So while I'm saying that, I just want you all to know that on, and I made copies of this, on October 1st, Wayne and I and Barb Conboy and Chris Rochek and Felix from Boynton Beach, we all met together and walked on both sides on the Ocean Ridge side and on the Boynton side to locate the meters or the valves where you start and stop the subaqueous lines. So I had written, this is a copy of their field observation report. I thought maybe it might be a good idea to give that to them. So at the end of the day, we located meter boxes and valves, so we know where the system stops and starts on both sides, and you can read that report. So in Appendix N, there is a listing of the water distribution system pipe inventory. Now, I've had some questions like, why don't you have the information of pipe type for all of the lines? Now, the information that's here was accumulated and created from information in the past, old plans from firms like Barker, Osher, Anderson, if you remember those guys, who are no longer in business, and we can't call them up and ask them questions. So we did the best we can to utilize some old documents and work together with Boynton Beach to come up with an inventory. So in cases where there are no pipe type, meaning whether it's ductile iron pipe or cast iron pipe, we don't have that information because we either couldn't read it off the plans or we just didn't know. They're older. So the inventory shows at the end of the day, if you look on page 2 of 2, the subaqueous crossings were added to the inventory. This is in your final. There's approximately 91,000 linear feet of water mains that run underneath the ground that supply us drinking water. There was a question asked with respect to longevity of pipes, and I know the Coastal Star interviewed some folks and gave some answers, and it's not a clear, definitive, in 25 years it's going to fall apart, so in the 25 years one day you can replace it. That's just not realistic. I had one of my engineering interns do a little bit of Googling on the computer, and she wrote a one-page summary of what she found with respect to engineers, the EPA, and the Ductile Iron Pipe Research Association, and I'm going to hand this out to you, and if you feel like reading it later, it's interesting information about the lifespan of ductile iron pipe. At the end of the day, these groups expect the life cycle range of DIP pipe to be anywhere from 60 years to 150 years lifespan. Now, of course, so the general consensus at the end of the day from these groups is about 100 years lifespan. But understand that we live on a barrier island, and our soil type is different than soil types anywhere else. So that's why you can't just say it's a 100-year lifespan. But I wanted you to know, though, that there's a range between 60 years and 150 years for that type of pipe.
What type of pipe is it? What's it made of?
Ductile iron pipe,
It's an iron pipe.
Yeah, which is predominantly the standard in the industry for potable water distribution systems. Probably in the last few decades, we've been proposing PVC, sometimes polyvinyl chloride. That lifespan, I don't think anybody's lived long enough to say how long that lifespan is. No different than there are some pipe in here called HDPE, high density polyethylene, that dark pipe. We're putting it in for drainage right now, switching out the metal and putting that in. There is no limit to those types of pipes, those polyplastic type pipes. No limit to the lifespan on those. You can contemplate, but no one's lived long enough. So I'm going to hand this out to you too, so you have the technical information on the longevity of pipe. Now, there were additional water distribution pipes put in the 90s, and you'll see that in the report. In some cases, the water distribution system was located on the opposite side of A1A. And I think, but I don't know for sure, that the reason for that is that the pipes were upsized and the pipes were there so that there was sufficient capacity for anyone in the town to tap into either line. The other line's older, the parallel line, the newer line is sufficient to handle all of the units along North Ocean Boulevard. So that's why there's a double system, some redundancy, if you will, in the town with respect to the water system. So these 3 subaqueous crossings connect to the city of Boynton Beach, and Boynton Beach supplies the water to all of you. And what we do here on the ground as your staff is we continue to work, and we work very well with Boynton Beach Utilities to coordinate any new projects, any projects that are being renovated, or any type of repairs. We work together to make sure that it gets corrected as quickly as possible, and to the extent that we hopefully try not to give you a boil water notice. In times of a break, we have no choice. I mean, the quality of the water is our #1 priority. But we try to be as proactive as we can to make sure that the system not only gives you the proper flow, but gives you the proper water quality as well. So we've been working together with Boynton Beach Utilities to make sure that when you turn your faucet on, there's no issues. For the most part, we don't really have a lot of issues with respect to the water distribution system. We have money in the budget that we put aside every year for maintenance. The system itself, the main lines were done in the late 90s, so it wasn't that long ago. If you understand the life cycle of ductile iron pipe, the 90s were not that long ago. So some of us remember when that system was put in. And the parallel system which includes the parallel system along North Ocean Boulevard. Now on a little more of a technical note, that a water distribution system isn't just a pipe, it's pipes that include valves, and valves shut things on and off. There are valves throughout the town, and you can see them in the ground. They're about this big in diameter. The system also comprises fire protection as well. So off of that system is not only your domestic drinking water line, it also includes the fire protection, the fire lines, which you'll see the fire hydrants. And fire hydrants do have their own valves, so that we can shut on and off. So the town, it's been the town's responsibility, and the town has been maintaining the fire lines. There's a program in place to check the fire hydrants, and that is all done through the Public Works Department. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I need to explain to all of you. So on the ground, when we get a new application for a new house or a renovation to expand a house. Sometimes we get requests to change the size of the domestic line, and we'll work with Boynton Beach to come up with a meter change if there needs to be a meter change, or and work together to make sure that we're all on the same page. If there's a project on Island Drive South that involved 3 lots that were turned into 2 lots that were turned into 3 lots. And so we've been coordinating currently with Boynton Utilities to not only make sure that these new meters get set in the proper place, but that there's utility easements around them so that it's clear that we have the ability, both governments have the ability to go in and repair those meters. In the older areas, we have pretty much a right-of-way. There's not utility easements on private property everywhere in the front yard, where you will see that in some municipalities in Palm Beach County. So we have a system in place that if there is a break, we work together. We have a common vendor that we use, that we've been using probably 20 years or so, who works with both cities to make the repair swiftly and quickly. So not a lot of excitement with respect to the water distribution line because the systems have been in play for a long time and have been working sufficiently.
Lisa, who owns the water meters?
The
Meters,
city of Boynton Beach owns the meters.
just the meter. The feed to the meter and the feed exiting the meter?
The system within the municipal limits of Ocean Ridge is owned by the town of Ocean Ridge.
But the line from the meter to the house that's the property owner.
That's the property owner. On private property, from the meter to the house is the property owner. Does that make sense?
Why were there parallel lines run originally?
I know, that's a good question, because I wasn't here. I came here around the 1999 time, 98, 99. There may have been a couple reasons. One is the lines, I believe, and if you look at the report, I think the diameter of those lines are around 6 inches. And when you deal with fire flows, you need more than 6 inches. It's just not big enough. So those were old pipes. And I don't know because I wasn't here, but I would suspect that we put in bigger sized pipes to not only handle fire flow, but for future connections for anybody else along North Ocean so that we had the proper flows that we needed to handle the development that we have in the town.
And where does sprinkler system water come from?
So that's a really good question. There's 2 ways that you can get irrigation. One is by providing your own system with your own well and pump. I don't know how many people have that in town. I know I personally live on a barrier island. I have my own system.
Do you have a well?
I have a well. It's about 120 feet deep. A small one, for my irrigation. So I don't get charged for that. In Ocean Ridge, you can have that, or you can hook up your irrigation to the potable water system, and you will be charged for the usage. But I believe that there's a tiered system with respect to the usage of water. Well, there is, and it's in their report. Depending upon how much you use, the gallons of water that you use, the thousands of gallons of water, you can see how it drops down over, right? So if they know that if you're using the system for irrigation, they know, and you'll be charged accordingly.
So it's the same quality of water, there's no difference.
It's the same quality of water that you're
Going on your
drinking
lawns.
that is going on your lawns, that's correct.
That requires 2 meters?
So, no, so they're not, the city doesn't do it that way, they just do it 1 meter, and again, it's based on the volume of flow. When you utilize a system of your own system, a well system, for the most part, there is nothing, the well driller will test for salinity for those of us on the barrier islands, but if the salinity is low enough, so as not to cause an adverse impact to your vegetation, they'll drill the well, and then there's no other pre-treatment prior to the irrigation spraying on your landscaping. But there are subsurface lenses that they call underneath the ground, believe it or not, that are freshwater in nature, and that's what they use to tap into to create an irrigation well. Not enough for us to utilize to drink the lens, but enough for us to irrigate.
So I read in a report somewhere that if we could have our own well for the whole city. It was looked into like 20 years ago. And it's probably not a feasible option, but it does exist, right? You could do it going to the aquifer.
Well,
I'm just curious.
and that would have to be, I don't, that's a good question, and I don't have the answer to that. I would suspect that there would be a lot of federal and state and regional requirements that may not allow that, may have allowed it in the past, but may not allow it today. When you create a well field to take water out of the ground, a well, it creates a well field, like a zone of influence, and that zone is fairly big. And over time, those maps that show the diameter of the impact have changed in such a way that it basically increased. So I don't know if that's feasible today or not.
That was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Report, yeah, so.
I mean,
Yes.
I would
Yeah.
add,
Yeah.
it may or may not be feasible to actually access water, but then we'd have to build a water plant, and we'd need all the land for that and the cost for that. It's not like an irrigation where you, just bring it out of the ground
Right.
and send it to the home. So
Right.
I
That's
doubt
correct.
Yeah, that's
Because there's treatment involved with us drinking it versus no treatment to irrigate landscaping. Big difference, big difference. So yes, thank you, Arthur.
The summary of that, excuse me, is in the 20-year-old report. And at that time, it was found that the water was available, but the cost was prohibitive.
Right,
Like
right.
that Art started.
Now, also in that old report, there was a statement with respect to our neighbors to the north. The town of Manalapan has their own water distribution system and their own plant. That was in that old report an option as well if in the future the town decides to not utilize Boynton Beach Utilities bulk water, or to have some redundancy with another municipality, that's an option as well.
However, I think Manalapan just closed down their system.
Well, I don't know about that.
Didn't they
No.
hook up to?
We
So-
have Manalapan in the audience.
So Linda Stumpf is here. She's
So
the
I guess
town
they don't- I
manager
guess
for
they
the
don't
town of
Excuse me, I
Manalapan.
missed your comment, Tracy.
We have Linda from Manalapan in the audience if you'd like to ask her a
But
question.
didn't Hypoluxo no longer gets Manalapan?
We're still getting water from Manalapan, so we won't close our system down when we leave.
Okay, but it's leaving, right?
Hold on,
Yes.
Okay. You're relevant, sorry.
hold on. Linda, could we have you come forward and give us a little overview on the Nalapan, please? A little education
She's not
for
going to
us?
talk to me now because I
Sorry, Linda.
acknowledged her. Sorry.
Names.
And thank you for coming.
Hi there. You're correct, Hypluxo, after being with Manalapan for over 30 years, is now
going to Boynton Beach.
Full disclosure, I only know this because I own a townhouse in Humboldt, so when I saw that document, so that's the reason I
Yes,
raised
it
it,
is.
sorry.
But we're not closing our water system, and we still have the same amount of water that we can produce. And we're still servicing Manalapan.
Thank you. Sorry for putting you on the spot.
That's okay. That's okay. Any other questions?
Any other questions for Mel?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, sorry. So that's pretty much my report to all of you.
Okay,
Unless-
I have a question.
Yes.
Do we have the ability in our infrastructure that if we have a major leak, that we can isolate different portions of the town and still feed the rest?
Yes, we do that all the time.
Okay. And the intracoastal crossings, the subaqueous pipes and the valves, where does Ocean Ridge's responsibility start and where does Boynton's end?
So that, to the best of my knowledge, where the meter box or the valve on Boynton Beach's side is located, and you'll see that in that report physically, because we saw it. From there, easterly is our responsibility, the town. Oh, except for the north one. Yeah, okay.
This is what I'm trying to
I
clarify.
know,
They're-
so-
In the audience, they're talking about where I was going with the next question. Go
Okay,
ahead.
so there's some agreements, I guess, with respect to the north crossing not being accepted by Boynton Beach Utilities. And maybe that's because back then it was a HDPE, that high-density polyethylene pipe. You know, subaqueous crossings back then weren't done by that type of pipe. Nonetheless, the town is responsible for that one. The two to the south, the one that's parallel to Ocean Ave and parallel to Woolbright Road, are the responsibility of Boynton Beach Utilities. And there's a clear start and stop on both sides above ground, so you can actually visually see that part of it.
Your report, your revised report now shows that there's 2 HDPE pipes. So has Boynton accepted the other one, but
Yeah,
but not the northern one?
I think the other one is older. Yeah. Yeah.
You'll get it for me? Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay, so if there was a break in, let's see, it would be let's say the Woolbright pipe, Boynton would be responsible for the cost of,
Well, I mean, we, to the best of my knowledge, technically, I mean, we all work together to make sure that we make any repairs necessary. A subaqueous line should not have any
I understand.
issues, and I don't think we've ever had any in the history of this town, of the subaqueous lines.
They fix it and you get a bill later.
Well, that's
So-
what I'm trying to determine.
To the best of my knowledge, we haven't had any issues with the 3 subaqueous lines. I don't have all the information with respect to interlocal agreements with respect to those 3
Well, I'm
lines.
just trying to clarify this because I think it needs to be delineated in a more clear, concise way in the next agreement. I understand what's gone on in the past, and I understand that
Yeah,
it's hypothetical of a break, but
Right.
it would be a significant item if it did.
okay, agreed.
Any other comments on the presentation so far? Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry, Lisa, just one last. So, of the 3 subaqueous lines, it was unclear to me, the one line was not accepted by Boynton, and the city's responsible for any maintenance or repairs on that line.
Right.
Okay, the other 2 lines are owned by,
We don't know exactly, we don't know for sure. It may be Boynton's responsibility for the other 2 lines.
okay, Well, as I read the existing.
I know, we
agreements-
put it in there because we included it in our report so that we
Well,
knew exactly
I'm-
what was there.
I'm going back to the original, the 1990 agreement.
Oh,
The one
okay.
that I was referenced.
The
Okay.
1990 agreement is clear that, to me, it's clear that if the city, you know, that if the town owns the line, the town's responsible for it, for the repairs, either they do it themselves or the city does it and and they have to pay the city plus the surcharges, which we discussed. Or the city already owns it and they cover the costs. So, all right, so we don't know who owns it, because at one point they said, I thought someone mentioned the city's ownership ended at the city side.
Well, I mean, there's old agreements, there's probably agreements with respect to those 3 lines, and they were done at different times. I know the north one was the latest one, so we have more information on that. We did not research the records with respect to the design and responsibility and maintenance obligation of those historic 3 lines. I mean, we can do that. We can go through the records and research that and get back with you.
Thank you.
When there's a repair done on and it's our lines, the town, what usually happens is we call, the company's called Line Tech, which is a vendor we've used for a long time, and Boynton uses them too. The bill comes to us directly, and we pay the bill. So I know there's another option in that agreement with respect to how breaks are repaired, but for the most part, currently, there is no surcharge. We pay the bill exactly as to what the repair is. There's no upcharge.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Kathy, could you pick this up on the screen? So I would like to move from this inventory approach to our water distribution system to comparing the present conditions to the items that we're going to need to have an understanding of, make choices on, and will affect our options for moving forward with another agreement with Boynton Beach. I would like to separate this from a discussion of whether we would be looking at a system of our own, whether we would be looking at finding another vendor. I think that needs to be at a later meeting. I would just like to keep this in the context now of, we have a background from our engineer of what we currently have, and I would like to show how it impacts us in various areas that need to be structured in any future agreement. So the top line is the existing owner's Ocean Ridge, and the categories are infrastructure ownership, pipes, valves, hydrants, and intercoastal water mains. Then with the additional categories of how we maintain them, how we repair them, and how we replace them. And I think after you heard what Lisa presented, and I think all of us to some extent are aware of the issues that we've had with the major water main breakout on Ocean Boulevard, and the existing large work effort that we're undergoing with repairing and replacing fire hydrants. You can see here that we have 85,000 linear feet of pipes, 84% of it that is pre-1994. I'm just identifying that. Obviously, I'm not taking a cause and effect approach to it. Lisa's saying that we do have an extensive life cycle of those pipes, but that's the inventory of them. We have 290 main valves on our water system. We have 696 water services in town that are connected to Boynton, and 143 fire hydrants. 18 of them have been replaced in this cycle, 2 have been refurbished, and the rest is in an ongoing maintenance and upgrade program that will probably continue for probably 5 or 6 more years. The intracoastal water mains we've just discussed, that clearly needs to be, the ownership and responsibility needs to be clarified quite a bit more to move forward. Maintenance and repair have become significant items for the town. The fire hydrants alone, fiscal year 18-19 is a $100,000 item. It's going to be a $100,000 item in the 1920 budget cycle, and it's going to obviously continue on at some rate that the town will determine in the future and have to budget for. Valve maintenance, I'm not sure what we do for valve maintenance. Do we have a plan at all that addresses that?
Currently, the valves are looked at, and we do have some concerns with the valves in terms of making sure that they're able to shut off in its entirety. But for the most part, that's an ongoing project. We haven't addressed that issue in its entirety at this point.
Well, just,
Lisa?
I mean, from time to time, those valves are exercised. Meaning you turn them on and you turn them off to make sure that they're working properly.
And has that been done?
We do that from time to time. And you have to do that when you're testing a fire hydrant. Those are done when the fire hydrant's being tested, or should be anyway.
So those are on an
So
annual
those
cycle.
are on it, yeah, okay, there you go.
The fire hydrants and the fire hydrant valves are on an annual cycle now. The main valves, that is to be addressed as well. And we are looking at it and working through that process, but there is no schedule set up for that one as of yet.
Okay. Here's an itemized 5-year cost of repairs that we have had to the water pipes. One of them was a significant contributor to this, approximately $100,000 for the one out front, but it averages about $39,000 a year. Replacement, that's something that probably is going to have to be addressed in the future. I don't know if anything at all is going to be set aside for that, but right now there is no capital plan for any.
Right. So when, in the past, it has been the commission's wishes that when there's a capital plan being proposed, for example, Coconut Lane, and you'll see Coconut Lane and Hudson Avenue in that report were done in 2004, at 4 or 5. Those 2 roads were totally rehabilitated, meaning the rock base, the subgrade, the road was elevated to its maximum potential, and in doing that at the same time, it was cost effective to replace the 2 water lines on those streets with a new water main. Since you're out there immobilized and the road's torn up, let's just replace the water main. So we left the old water main in place and provided a new water line. So in cases where we do capital improvements with respect to the road, We always give the option to the town commission to come in and bring in a newer line.
Are there any future projects that you see where that might happen again?
Not to the extent that we did Hudson and Coconut, not at this time. The projects that are shown in our a multi-year capital plan involve drainage repairs that are somewhat isolated and not contiguous to the point where we have to remove an entire roadway system.
Okay. So I think that gives us a state of where we are. Our options going forward, we have the 30-year agreement that Art referenced. I think the language on that could be improved quite a bit in terms of specifics. The Boynton Beach proposal is outlined here at the bottom in the words that Boynton Beach is used is transferring ownership. I don't know what the other members of this committee have been hearing. I know I've had my ear bent many, many times over the word ownership. I don't know if that's the correct legal term or if what we really should be talking about is something more in line of a change of custody. There are items in the 30-year-old agreement that at the end of the agreement, things can be transferred back, but it references a Florida statute of paying to get those items returned. And I think most of the people that I've heard in the town are not comfortable with a large part of our infrastructure going to Boynton. I think the sense of a lot of people is that we're giving something away. I'm not so sure that's what we have to do or what we can do, and I think the important thing would be that we have a mechanism, a vehicle, have a discussion of how things can be transferred to Boynton, a custody transfer to Boynton, and if or when that agreement is ended in the future, that those items come back to Ocean Ridge the same way they go to Boynton Beach. So if Boynton purchases those things, we would have to purchase them back. But if those things are transferred to Boynton for custody, that custody comes back to Ocean Ridge with no restitution, no compensation to have to come back. So I would like that item to be discussed among the panel members here, and after that we'll open it to the audience for their comments. Ron, do you have any comment?
Frankly, the idea that letting Boynton take over the lines somehow diminishes Ocean Ridge's sovereignty, I think is a little bit more emotional than it is actual. I see the cost of this, and I know what cost goes to the individual homeowners or multifamily units, and I see the cost to the town plus the cost of the fire system. I understand. I take it the fire system would fall into the same category of transfer of ownership.
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
If that's the case, then we're talking about a lot of money that Boynton's picking up, all right, that the town does not have to have, and I'd be interested to know what impact that would have on the rates. I would also like to know that a few other things is that I'm not completely certain of how the ownership of what's necessary in the takeover, or where they find issues that have to be grandfathered. I wouldn't want to see anything like that. that you take it on, you take on the total responsibility, okay, for it. So, where I sit right now, I would believe that we would move forward to some of the stipulations that you made, Neil, in your remarks, that we would make this more favorable to Ocean Ridge in terms of the structure, the turnover structure, the actual operational structure, what is and what is not covered. I actually have no objections under those circumstances to seeing the ownership, wrong word, the transfer to going towards Boynton Beach, assuming all those other factors could be agreed upon.
Thank you. Art,
I'll defer to after hearing from other folks.
anyone else?
I can confirm that people are definitely bending my ear as well in terms of it being a fairly emotional issue in terms of that word ownership. And, but I think I'm too new to town for the last 2 years in this town to really intelligently talk to that. I'm a pragmatist, I think we do what makes sense, and I agree with what you said, but maybe the word ownership is a kind of a heavy word.
John?
Do we know where Boynton stands? What, do they want just a transfer of ownership, or do they want to purchase? I mean, do we know where they stand?
We have not begun the negotiations yet.
So we don't know what their intentions are. Well,
No.
maybe we should, I'm probably reserve my thoughts until we know that. I mean, that's a big question of what they want to do, at this point, and what they're willing to do.
We're just starting to get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
Can't hear John. Yeah, gotta use the mic.
Oh, okay, sorry about that. I was just wondering where Boynton actually stands on the whole issue, if they're willing to purchase it, or if it's just a transfer of ownership. And until that's decided, I'll probably, reserve any thoughts until we know that answer. I mean, that's a pretty big question. So I'm gonna refrain from any other comments.
I have a question and then a comment, and I'd like to make a motion. The question is, I thought Boynton wanted ownership of the lines so that they could have full control of the entire system.
I believe that's what's in their presentation.
That's right.
Correct. Okay. But what you're saying is that like the terms of that contract has not been spelled out. But we do know, as pointed out, that Boynton would like to have full ownership for that. So my comment is I agree with what Ron mentioned. The whole, and what Roy said, it's more emotional about ownership. From the opinion of the town attorney at the last meeting, is that ownership does not give the city of Boynton Beach any rights whatsoever regarding annexation. So I really think that's an emotional issue. I would like to make a motion, because I just sort of like cut to the end. It's like there's all this talk and evaluation. Great study by Ingenuity, thank you very much. It'll lay the format for something. So I have two motions I want to make today, but since we're on water now, I'll make the one about water. I've read the agreements and resolutions, and I would like to propose whatever we do here, make a motion, resolution, that we recommend to the town commission that the town agree to transfer ownership of the entire water system to Boynton Beach, subject to, number one, is that Boynton Beach, for eternity, pays the same rates as the city of Boynton Beach residents.
Ocean Ridge.
Ocean Ridge pays the same as Boynton Beach, no surcharge, and that the city of Boynton Beach assume all responsibility and pay all costs of maintenance, repairs, and replacement, and at no charge to the city. And then I would just add, and that's what the motion is. Clarification, justification is that in exchange for the city of Boynton Beach taking on all this financial obligation, which under the current contract, the town is liable for. The town is agreeing to transfer ownership to them. However, they're not charging them at the Boynton Beach for purchasing the pipes. So in exchange for having to pay the town of Ocean Ridge for buying the pipes, they're now saying, instead of paying you for the pipes, we will agree to all the future responsibility for maintenance, repair, replacement, et cetera. So I'd like to make that motion, and then, so that's my motion. If there's a second, anybody wants to.
I'd second it.
I'd like to amend it. I think we have to define what happens at the end of the agreement before we agree what the agreement is.
I won't accept the amendment. The motion is in perpetuity. There's no reason to ever bring it back.
I don't,
Any public comment?
Sure, well, let comment first, if they have any.
My comment is as before, I'm a pragmatist, so, you know, the word ownership itself does not give me the level of heartburn that I've heard before. Yes, Patty?
Wait, we're not open for comments.
there's no comment now.
Yeah, no, this is just, if you have anything to say, or if John has anything to say, and then
I'll leave it at that.
No, I don't have anything to say right now.
Is there any comment on my amendment?
I didn't accept it, so.
No, I understood you didn't, but I'm asking the other people on the board if they did.
I think perpetuity makes sense.
Yeah, my second.
I agree with that.
Okay, so the amendment fails.
So I think it's
So do we have a vote on,
Well, you want to open it for public comment
comment.
first. Open public comment first.
okay, public comment then? Go ahead.
Betty Bingham, 1 East Ocean Avenue. Number one, I don't know why Boynton would agree to that. Number two, you lose all control of the, they have got to be able to recoup their costs. And we have no way of controlling how they monitor their costs or who they do their work with. In other words, we've lost all control of our water system. Boynton takes it over, and we don't know in the future what it's going to cost us.
And I know I'm not supposed to, I would like to respond to that. The motion said that the only thing they can charge us is the same that they charge the residents of Boynton Beach. So
But-
we're done at that point. They can't add any surcharges on.
That's why I say I don't know why they would accept that proposal. If they have to
We'll
replace our
see.
pipes,
Well,
et cetera.
We will see.
Any other comments?
Terry Brown, Harbor Drive South. Well, I don't think this is a good idea to give the infrastructure to the city of Boynton Beach. First of all, I was here, it was G and Jensen that was one of the engineering firms involved, and we paid big bucks for the replacement of those pipes. And we're getting nothing back except for future maintenance. I mean, how often does that occur? We had one water break here and everybody had a heart attack. And it came in, it got fixed, and they paid for it, right? These pipes, 150 years, 50 years, whatever, these pipes have only been in since the early 90s. We own them, we have control of them. You give those pipes to the city of Boynton Beach for no cash, we get nothing back in exchange for the thousands and thousands of dollars. I don't even know what the number was. It was really a big number. You could probably look that up. That's crazy. And you lose control, as Betty pointed out. What happens if, for some reason, they have to change the route of the pipe, and they have to come into a private property owner or the town and ask for a new right-of-way? You say it in perpetuity. Things change. Routes change, right-of-way changes. They're gonna come in with a lawyer and say, we have to put the pipe here or put there. This is not a smart idea, in my opinion. You need to keep control of the pipes. Pay the maintenance if you get a break, which is what you just did. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. I'm not sure why they want the pipes. There's some scheme here that we're not aware of. So they're not gonna give you the whole story. Okay? Thank you.
Any other comments?
Could we hear from the folks at Boynton? They're sitting right here in the audience.
Let me just say, I mean, we can do whatever the chair likes. This is not the format, in my opinion. I don't think this is the format. They're certainly not in any position to negotiate anything. We're not in a position to negotiate. What we are doing is making a recommendation to the town commission, and if they so agree, they would be the ones to negotiate. But I think what I've proposed, don't know whether anybody agrees, is what I think is the best option and should be the ultimate goal. I mean, I can address some of the other concerns here, but I think we said enough to be able to take a vote and maybe pass this back to the commission and say, here you go, you know.
I think my feelings, and I'm using the word feelings, I think this was a little bit premature, that you do have the right to make a motion, and I think we can vote on that motion, because it is a recommendation, it is not a negotiation. So I don't think you're out of order. So go ahead and we'll take a vote.
Do you want me to repeat or try to summarize or?
Nope, you
I think
just
we
call
have
the
it.
vote. Call the
We'll
vote.
just call the vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed?
No.
If I might, I'd like to make a motion with respect to septic-to-sewer.
I don't think we finished our septic-to-sewer discussion yet. Could I ask you to wait on that one?
I'll
Or
wait.
At least another meeting?
Frankly, I don't think we need another meeting, so I think we're done, and I'd like to make such a motion.
Do you want me to, well, there was work that you asked in the agenda to be done,
Correct.
which we've done. It should be reported, at least. We should talk about, you asked for a profile of the town.
That is
and-
correct.
And I've done that.
I'm happy to wait to hear that.
Okay.
And I think that's what
We
Neil
also
was.
have two committee members that haven't even been heard from yet.
That's right.
Neil, if you want to move to number 2 on the agenda, that would be appropriate.
Well, I just want to, I'm just trying to get Art to defer his calling for a vote here until I think it's appropriate, so.
Well, I'll defer to the end of the meeting, and if something happens between then that makes me change my mind, then I'll change my mind.
Okay. So, Mr. Kern, let's have your,
Could we put up the profile slide, not the individual units, but the summary? It's the top, it's labeled treatment plants and septic systems profile. That's the one, right there.
This one right here?
That's it.
Is there a way to blow it up there?
I had the opportunity, I sent out a letter to every board or responsible person at every multifamily unit in Ocean Ridge. The number of complexes, as you can see up at the top, there are 37, and we had 18 respond. Now that looks a little low, but when you think about septic systems, there's not a lot to respond to, and I'll go into that in a minute, because they, frankly, they have their own private system, and they don't know a lot of the data, so they didn't respond. But of the treatment plants, we have, there are 15 treatment plants that cover about 702 units. And of that's responding, that's about 74%, okay, of the multifamilies that respond, okay, to this survey or to the usage. The septic systems are about 179 units, 12 plants. Okay, it's about 20%, 19% of the total units. And there's 5 I can't find. They won't respond. I know who they are, but they won't respond. And some of them are flat right rude. So that surprised me a little bit. And I don't want to go into one in particular. I'd like to strangle them. But they wouldn't respond, and they basically said that it's none of the town's business. So in any way, since there's such a small amount, it really isn't worth the time. We were asked about capacity, and capacity is an engineering term. And when you're building a plant, they use these statistics that engineers that they know from all this experience, and that tells the capacity. For example, if you looked up the capacity of Crown Colony, Colonial Ridge, and Ocean Manor, you'd find out that the capacity that is recommended in Lisa's numbers happens to be 102,000. That plant is rated for 100,000. So when you're building something, you use those numbers. But the actual usage, okay, is determined on a metered basis that we do monthly. So the average capacity in the town is about 21,000 gallons per day, and it's only about 5.8 or 5,800 gallons that's actually used. Now these are averages. This time of the year it'll start to build in March, mostly in March. You have enormous peaks, but in August, July, it's very low. So I'm dealing with averages here, but some of these averages, for example, most of them have peaks that are, I would say, 3 times, okay, their daily average. So it doesn't surprise me in a lot of cases. We calculated out using, I got a hold of Joe, as a matter of fact, from Boynton. I said, tell me what your average customer kind of numbers are. And Joe came through with he sent me to a website, and it did show, one of their websites, and it did show some usage. So I calculated out using their data and the number of units, and I came up with their potential. Now a place using a septic system, they don't really know their capacity. They know what it was built for, but they don't know their usage, and they don't know their cost, because they do it basically on an operating cost basis. When something goes wrong or it needs to be pumped out, or they just pay for it. It's part of the operating budget. If they've got to replace a tank or something like that, there may be a capital item in an assessment, but that's typically, they have no idea what their usage is. So their numbers, where they've got a capacity of 4,400 and they're using about 1,500, these are calculated numbers. But I think they're pretty close. I wouldn't be way off. When we get to total usage, you can see that the average capacity in town is about 26,000 gallons per day. Down at the bottom, I showed you the independent plant because it isn't part of any of the multifamily complexes, but it does the service for 3. You can see that one's 100,000 with a 30,000 gallon a day. That kind of bumps up some of the averages because they are included in the numbers above, in the average numbers above. So we move on to costs next. I asked them, tell me what your monthly cost is. The average for the town for a treatment plant is about $2,600 a month. Okay, in 19, and they actually expect it to go down in 20, which is mostly driven by the Crown Colony, Colonial Crown Manor disposal system. However, so their unit cost on average is $52, and they expect it to go down to $49. This is what people are paying today, okay, for sewage. In full disclosure, the website at Boynton Beach is $28. Okay, so these numbers represent a significant cost to every unit owner's HOA or condo fee. This doesn't matter whether it's a injection well plant or it's a drain field plant. These are the numbers that are considered. The detail that goes with this is on the other pages, and it's by unit, which ones have responded, what their numbers is. So you can go through that. There's 3 pages of it. You could go through that, and you can take a look at which ones are driving. We have some that are going to operate on $12, which surprises me. Okay, I think that's low, but that's what they said they're doing, and they happen to be a new plant, by the way. It's the one at Ocean Breeze. Ocean Breeze has it's a new plant, it's a hybrid plant. Okay, it's a combination of way they treat the sewage. That one they say that comes from they have very little data, but it comes from their situation. But their situation is that the plant hasn't actually been certified just until recently. So I think the costs are a little bit low. We have some plants that have a cost, okay, that run up into the area of $80 per month. All right, so it varies. The ages also vary from new, 4.5 years, okay, to 50. So some of them have, and many of them are over 35 years old. Of the number of plants, the number of injection well plants are 4, and the rest of them are all drain field. Either they're a treatment plant or a septic plant, but it's a drain field. Those are the ones that would be, if we were looking at the big picture of things, injection well plants, those plants have very little effect upon the environment because the well goes down so deep it's actually into the water table. The drain field plants, they're no different than a house septic system. It's treated. Some of them are treated better than a house plant because they treat the plant, but the water still ends up on the coral shelf and it's open for ground pollution. So the majority of our multifamily homes are in that category. So but the injection well number of plants, actually, if you add the number of unit owners to that, they are over a third, okay, of the multifamily homes have injection wells. So in these plants, all of them came back. I asked for comments on 100% of them that responded, and they said, I have a plant that's rusted but operational. I have a plant that's rusted, but because they're metal plants, and they'll be repaired when necessary. And the rest all are concrete plants that say the longevity is another 15, 20. One of them said 50 years. So, and I have obviously personal experience with the one plant. It's a concrete plant, and it's in really good operational condition. Matter of fact, it's working the best now. As Lisa pointed out, I listened to her presentation where she mentioned the Crown Colony plant several times. The Crown Colony plant over the last 2 years has been improved and upgraded, and complete change of management and vendors, and was able to lower the rates this year from $45 to $30 in 2020. So that's a significant number when you're talking about 290 units. So that's driving the cost down a bit. So all in all, my study shows, and I would wish a few more would have got back, but I don't think because of the percentages of ownership that's reported, I think we have a fairly good picture, okay, of the town's profile, the profile at least of how they handle sewage in the town of Ocean Ridge.
Thank you.
Okay. Comments?
Do you have anything to, from your other towns, and
No, that's still ongoing.
that's still ongoing?
Yeah.
John, do you have anything
Well,
about?
no, I reached out to congressman and senator, and I only heard back from one of them, and there's no grant money right now available. There's nothing on the horizon or on the radar screen about making it mandatory that we convert. And that's kind of where we are. There's just nothing on the horizon whatsoever. Right now, people are talking about it. The governor seems to be leaning that way, but as of right now, there's nothing set in stone that conversion's coming, or mandate's coming, so.
Okay. Any other committee member comments?
I'd just like to add one thing. The study did tell me that, and after seeing the presentation from Boynton and the presentation by Lisa, that the alternatives, the all or nothing proposal, which is what both of them are coming, even though they're conceptual, seems to me to be premature, because I see it differently. I see that there's the all or nothing mean, do the mandate, our own mandate, to convert the town from septic to sewer. That's number one. Number two is do nothing. Not necessarily a good idea. And three is some hybrid of that uses the town ordinance, okay, to do something towards getting a goal of ending some of this pollution. I see that, and I think that's a lot more discussion in this committee, okay, than just saying, okay, we endorse the conceptual plan that's going to the commissioners. I think there's more. I think we need to do more in understanding the complex of a gravity system, of a vacuum flow system. I don't know enough about it. I haven't visited one. And I'm probably in the committee the one that's most familiar with this. I have not seen. I've seen obviously how a gravity system can work. I've been through a town conversion, a gravity town conversion system, but I've not seen a vacuum flow system. That came new to me this year. I know people who have studied this. We have them in Ocean Ridge, in the yacht club. There's a woman by the name of Brett Flanagan. Brett has done an enormous amount of work and research work. It's her business, actually. And she even made a presentation here, I believe, to the town at one point. I believe we need to hear from people like that. I'd like to hear from some experts on vacuum flow, those people who've installed it, their actual. And then when we talk about cost, I mean, we're not talking about a very simple, let's go do it. We're talking about $30 million on one, $15 million on the other, and then another $5 to $15 million of personal amount of money, okay, to hook up to those systems. This is not chump change. This is a $50 million project. So I can't see us running off. I can't even think about recommending this to the town without closing up some of these unanswered questions.
So I thank you for that excellent report, by the way. I really appreciate that. I think it's very beneficial. So I have a couple comments I'd like to make, and I'd like to make a motion. The first comment I'd like to make is that the report that was done by Ingenuity, which I really appreciate, thought was superb, I didn't view that as correct me if I'm wrong, I didn't view that as a proposal. I thought that was just a preliminary explanation of different options and systems. So I want to be clear on that you were not, there was nothing in there recommending any approach, pros, it was just laying out options at that point.
Yes, it's a feasibility study is what it is.
Okay.
So yes, you're correct.
I'm not even sure. Fine, we'll leave it at that. Okay, so what I'd like to discuss and make a few comments and then make a proposal is that clearly, well, I shouldn't say clearly, it does appear that there is the potential for environmental issues related to septic tanks. And however, it's unclear as to how large of an issue that is at the current point in time. So, so going back to the ingenuity report, there's 730, they said 730 single-family homes, virtually no complaints. Over 900 multifamily units. From what we've learned, it appears from what we've heard that only one has serious issues at this point, and that's the Wellington Arms, okay? And we can get on to them. There does not appear to be any clearly established environmental damage at this point in time. I would point out that Representative Caruso has proposed 2 pieces of legislation, one of them clearly addressing where there is an issue, and they define these basement management areas. Interesting to note that his legislation, or that legislation, refers that those basin management plans, none of them are in Palm Beach County or in South Florida. They're all actually in Central and North Florida. So I found that interesting. So what I've concluded is that there's no imminent need for conversion at this time. Also, as John mentioned, there's no state or regional mandates, and I certainly don't think Ocean Ridge should put in place a mandate. There's no state funding available at this time. So thus, I propose a recommendation to the full commission that no action be taken at this time to convert from septic to sewer, to continue to monitor the situation, and reevaluate if and when environmental conditions change, state or regional mandates imposed, or funding assistance becomes available. And that's my motion.
Okay, point of order. Okay, this was a comment section. I still have comments, okay? My comments are, this committee has still not done its job. The first part of the job was an assessment of what the town has. We have done that. Our second assessment was what is available to us. Ingenuity has done that. Boynton Beach has done that. The third assessment was, how do you implement such a project as this? We have not even touched it. We are going to touch it before this committee makes recommendations to the board, okay? We are going to find out what other communities have done, how they have implemented it, because that has value to the town. We are not going to take a position on saying yay, nay, until we have all the information.
I have 2 comments.
Okay.
Number one is, I'm not sure exactly where that mandate was spelled out in such.
It's right here.
No, that was his report. That was not the mandate from the council, from the commission. So I don't know
The
specifically.
town commission was to have us study it, okay?
Okay, so my last comment is, you're absolutely entitled to your position. So your comment should be made, I, not we. I'm allowed to make a motion. I think we have done our job. Maybe I'm the only one who feels that way.
Okay.
But I have made a motion. I think if there's a second, then there's a vote. If there's no second, then my motion fails. I think that's the way procedure works.
Okay. Do I have a second? Motion didn't carry. Okay, committee member comments and discussion is complete. The next meeting, we are going, correction?
Do you want to have them make comments, or move on?
I wanted to move on.
Good enough.
The next meeting, we are going to start discussing other communities, how they've adapted to this system. Any other comments?
I have a question.
Oh.
Are you ready for Raftellus to begin doing their study on the financing at this point?
I'll defer to Art. Art was the financing person. We haven't heard a peep about that, so. Art, would you like to discuss any of that at the next meeting?
Well, I'll
The
discuss it now. As I've said before, I don't see any rationale or justification to spend any money on determining the cost of financing of something that we know it's very expensive. I don't think there's any value of spending a penny of the town's money on that study.
Okay, so we hold off until the
Okay,
future.
so then I would like the next meeting to focus on implementation issues.
Yep, that's on me.
Pardon?
That's on me.
That's on you?
Yep.
Okay.
Forward to it.
Anything else the next meeting that the town would like to add? Okay.
No, but I'm doing further research on grant funding too, so.
I think that's gonna be ongoing, yeah. When can we have the next meeting? Is the third
November.
Thursday work again?
Yes, it does.
One scheduled November 21st. November 21st, Thursday, November 21st.
8:30.
That's right.
Does that work for everyone?
Works for me.
Works for me?
It's just before turkey, so yeah.
Works for you?
Yeah, first.
No postprandial lethargy at the meeting? And John, you were okay? I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm fine, yep.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Done.
We're done.
Hi.
Wait a minute.
Hi.
21?
Yes. Right.
Could you give the town a
Yes.
list of communities?
Your plant that I was talking about. No, it's your one on Adams Street. That's a hybrid plant. I think it may have been 18. I have to look at it, but it's a low number. I was shocked actually at his number. Yeah, John Fugo, right, is your president? Yeah, yeah. He was very open with me. He was one of the guys that gave me everything, and but he came back with that number.